housekeeping rules. We will be recording tonight's session for those students that are unable to be attending live with us. And in addition to that, note that this career panel is for you, our students and our attendees, and we have a good diverse panel here tonight. And so if you have any questions for any of our panelists, we encourage you to use our Q&A box that is located in like towards the bottom. There is a chat option, so you'll see Q&A, so you can go ahead and place your questions there throughout the event. We will be monitoring that, and so if you have any questions, myself, Samantha, and we have one other person behind the scenes that will be helping us in reviewing all of those chats. So feel free to do that at any point. Again, this is for you, so we encourage you to ask questions from these professionals. So with that in mind, one more thing that I do want to share. At the end of the event, I will be sharing a link for a quick assessment and evaluation. So if there are any of you that are here and joining us tonight and receiving extra credit for participating, you definitely want to make sure that you're hanging around and filling that out, because in that form is where you will share with us your information along with who you are receiving extra credit for. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and Samantha will go ahead and lead with our first questions, which is introducing our panelists.
Yes, thank you. Since Adam is the first one that video that I see, we're going to start with you. Please introduce yourself, where you work, and provide some information on your IT or cybersecurity background.
Okay, great. My name is Adam Marsh. I'm a software development engineer for Amazon. So a little bit about my background. I'm actually an alumni of GCC and a graduate of ASU. The work that I do for Amazon is mostly back-end service development. I work on the software that powers all of the sort centers. So your packages have to go through a really wide distribution network, and software runs all of it. And that's what I do. So my job is definitely heavy on the development side. I am involved with cybersecurity only from an application development standpoint. I don't really work on network security or do any pen defense or anything like that. I am aware of the profession and have a lot of respect for those guys. But like I said, definitely a core developer at heart.
Awesome, thank you. Roberto, would you go ahead and answer the same question?
Sure, Roberto Quiñones. I work at Intel. My role is an enterprise architect within the information security organization. The domain that I'm responsible for is in the crypto space. So key management, certificate management, and secrets management. And it's setting the architecture and the strategy for the engineering teams to adhere and also collaborate with development teams in the software space and in the product space. So any teams that are developing applications that we consume internally or externally go through reviews, and I participate in those reviews to ensure that teams are adhering to the existing policies or best practices across the enterprise and the industry.
Awesome, thank you. Josh, can you go ahead and answer the same question?
Sure. I am Josh Crack. I'm from Paradise Valley Community College. I'm the network engineer over there, and I also deal with system security on the network side. So all the firewalling and security measures and countermeasures for identity management. So not only am I in charge of the routing and switching for the campus, I'm also in charge of all of the monitoring and maintenance for that infrastructure as well. So I do get into server maintenance too, and I mostly, though, I am a network security individual. So I am also an alumni of GCC and spent 12 years there as the network administrator for that campus before I moved on over to the Paradise Valley campus too. So been in the game for quite a few years now. Anything from wireless all the way on across to desktop support. So yeah, I've grown over the years with the school.
Awesome. I love to hear it, how our students make that full circle and come back to work for us. So it's good to hear. Stacy, would you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. My name is Stacy Wallace, and I am the security architect for the Department of Revenue. And that's a single position. It basically is responsible for all of the security controls at the system level. So from applications all the way to network and in everything in between. I have a bachelor's degree from Auburn and a master's degree from University of Phoenix and in technology. And I've spent about 20 years in and out of different roles in IT, mostly in security, from a security analyst, incident responder, to an information assurance manager position. And I decided the further you get up in security, the more it becomes managerial and governance related as opposed to technical. So I took a position as a security architect to get my foot back into the technology side. And I'm in a hybrid position, which is a technical lead manager role that has some implementation of governance, but it's also a hybrid with the hands-on administrative of your controls. And I really love the architecture position in security. So I'm very much enjoying that right now.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I'll have to throw in a War Eagle as well for my Auburn fan. So Jeff, would you go ahead to introduce yourself and provide some information as well?
Yeah, you bet. So thanks for the invitation. Good evening to everybody. My name is Jeff Dimmerin, and I'm currently the director of the Pat Tillman Veterans Center at Arizona State University. But I am a 25-year Air Force veteran. I retired recently, first part of June, as a colonel in the Air Force, and my career field was cyberspace operations. And so started out way back working more of the IT type focus, had several command tours where I was basically the IT guy for an Air Force installation, working everything from network management to the cybersecurity defensive measures that were appropriate for those locations. But my last assignment before I retired was at U.S. Cyber Command at Fort Meade, which is co-located with the National Security Agency. And in that role, I had a leadership position in what was our Directorate of Planning and Programming. And I ran all the partnership development efforts in the cyberspace operations domain for the U.S. Cyber Command in that regard. So my role was to reach out and establish contacts and build partnerships with international allies and potential allies, as well as the interagency like FBI, CIA, DHS, to coordinate and ensure that all of our plans were lined up together towards common objectives. In addition to that, the international aspect of the role I played was to help develop the defensive cyberspace operational capability of all those partners. So, and that varies around the world, anywhere from our closest ally partners like the UK, Australia, Canada, very competent in the cyberspace domain, whereas some of the other countries and partners that we have needed a little bit of help. So the big difference in the role that I played and the job that I had that I mentioned is cyberspace operations, which is oriented towards the defensive and offensive aspects of what we do in that domain. It's a little bit different than cybersecurity, and happy to explain that at another time.
Yes, we had a comment that says, thank you for your service, Jeff. Amazing. I look forward to hearing more, so I hope you do share that. So just a reminder for our viewers and our students, if you do have any questions, because we have amazing panelists with such a diverse background. So I hope that introduction can help generate some questions that you might want to ask to our panelists. So feel free to put that in our Q&A. But a few of you did mention a little bit about your educational background. So I think I'll follow up with that. So if you all can maybe share, since we have many students on here, what type of education is necessary for your career? Are any special like degrees or certifications that are required in your role? And anybody can kind of jump in and get started.
I can start on my side of things. In the network world, some of the gold standards to get into the networking profession are the Cisco certification systems, the CCNA is where that starts. And that is a good springboard into the rest of the cyber world because you need all of those essential foundational components before you even get into the cybersecurity type aspects. Knowing that how a network works, how objects talk to each other when they're connected to each other is just a fundamental skill. So there's that aspect to the technical side of things. However, there's also an interpersonal aspect that I found over the course of my career that's very important. I also have, my 2-year Bachelor of Science, a 4-year, and even a master's degree as well through NAU. But the biggest aspect that helped push my career in a positive direction was the interpersonal communication skills that come from the undergraduate coursework. And so you have communications courses, you have writing courses such as English, sometimes free writing courses, all very, very important because when you get at a high level in the cybersecurity or even the IT fields, it becomes paramount to be able to communicate complex ideas to people who have no technical background at all. So you have to be able to draw parallels between your world and the world that everybody else sees that's not part of IT, so that you can find out what they are after, what kind of world they're envisioning, and then be like their translator of sorts to a new world through the IT lens as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, if I could weigh in real quick, I really want to emphasize what Josh just mentioned is so critical in kind of my experience in seeing that, yes, there are a multitude of certifications and licenses and additional training and education that you can get that's specific to the cyber domain, much of what he mentioned. But the importance of understanding the mission that you're supporting and being able to do that translation between kind of the operational need and requirements of the folks that you're supporting and enabling to do that is so critical in terms of translating back and forth between the technical side and the non-technical side. And I will tell you, any opportunity that I get, in this conversation or others, if I ever meet with any of you in person, is I'm really trying to push as much as I can to see as many cyber security experts get into the federal government and the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And when you can walk in to those environments and be able to describe and understand what it is you're supporting and lash it up and connect it to the technical understandings that you get from your certifications, training, education, et cetera, you're really going to set yourself above your peers by a long shot. And then the last thing I'll throw in too is of all the certs you can get maybe outside of the technical realm, a PMP for project management is also a really nice one to have. Because again, 25 years of experience, I'm always alarmed at how few people can actually do true project management and understand the basic concepts of key milestones, objectives, dependencies, tasks, resources, and anything you can do to kind of combine that with the technical background and understanding is huge.
Just to add what Josh and Jeff are saying, just to get my foot in the door or a foot in the door to an architect or a mid-level cybersecurity field, you really need a CISSP or equivalent. And the PMP has really come in handy in the position that I'm in now. I can tell you from experience, to add to what Josh was going to say, or Josh was saying, and then also I think Jeff could appreciate this with his background, the emotional intelligence and the ability to translate someone extremely smart or, and I'll give you an example. Early in my career, when I was an incident responder or security analyst, in my 20s, working with the Department of Defense as a contractor, our customer was usually general officers, colonels who needed data quick and fast. And their customer, I was the middle person, their customer were developers of the cell phone, people that speak different languages. And I'm going to tell you, at first, it can be very difficult to work with these extremely brilliant people, but there always is room for someone translating that language to someone who is also smart, but in a different way. So that's really where I got my success in my own personal career. I mean, yes, I did higher education and went on and got a master's, but I think the key element is, one, having the certs required for the job you want, and two, having that skill, that people skill, to translate extreme technical to decision maker language. And those are two different types of people, many different types of people, but really two different. And the PMP helps with that if it doesn't come natural. Some of us, like me, it doesn't come natural, but I think the PMP really helped.
Yeah, I'll echo what's been said already, but the communication piece is definitely super important, right? As mentioned, ensuring that you can articulate the work that you're doing and how it addresses the mission or the goal is probably one of the most important skills that you'll need. We have literally seen, I've been at Intel for three decades, right? For the years, we've seen people with many certifications, degrees, masters, PhDs come and go, right? They can't participate in the collaboration of meeting these objectives. And so number one, understanding those, and number two, being able to share those, right? What is it that I'm working and how does it address that mission? And if you can't do that, you're going to have a hard time being successful. Number one, because you understand, right? If you can't articulate it, it may mean that you didn't even get that. So it may be part from your leadership, but also part of what you need to do is, how do I make sure that I'm connected to that mission? So being comfortable asking the questions, right? And again, repeating what you understand is going to be super critical. So I would highlight that as probably one of the more critical, but the CISSPs and CASMs and whatnot are super important. But if you can't collaborate with your team, with adjacent teams, with your leadership, with folks who work under the programs that you support, then it doesn't matter, where your degree is from or how many letters after your name you have, you're going to have a hard time contributing to the success of your team or your company or the industry. So I'll echo the same sentiment. Communication is super critical.
Yeah, and from my perspective, to kind of take it back to what sort of education is necessary for a career as a software engineer, and what other special certifications could help. I have a degree in computer systems engineering. Most of the people that I work with have degrees in computer science. However, you also find people sometimes that have degrees in mathematics or some other type of science, and that'll get your foot in the door. And then from there, you're off to the interview process, and how well you perform, say, in a coding interview, determines whether or not you get an offer. I think it's a little bit different from an engineering perspective that certifications themselves tend not to be quite as important. They're great ways to start a conversation. You know, for example, you could get Oracle certified as a Java developer. Most companies aren't going to ask you for that, but if you wanted to prove competence to really wow somebody in HR and to start that conversation with a recruiter, it helps. You know, you could do the same thing with like an AWS cloud practitioner certification, or you know, a GCP certification, but it's definitely not necessary. I would say that, you know, if you're looking to be a software engineer, definitely pursue a computer science degree. If you are far down your track in, you know, say mathematics or some other science, and you still want to go into computer science, you can. It's not going to prevent you from doing that. You know, pursue those opportunities to learn how to code. To sort of echo what I'm hearing from the other panelists, communication and soft skills are very important. Your competence as an engineer is, yes, incredibly important, but your ability to communicate complex ideas in ways that your users understand, in ways that the product owners understand, and even other engineers. There's a lot of collaboration in what we do. So the ability to take your ideas and your thoughts and, you know, get the team to really understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to do, that's important too. We definitely don't want to lose sight of that. So yeah, that's about all I got for that.
Awesome.
I'll add
Thanks
one
for
more thing.
sharing. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to add one more thing, and that's scripting in any language, right? In cybersecurity, you have to process a lot of logs, data, correlate information. So if you can script in, you know, whatever it is, PowerShell, Python, you know, anything that you know to script in, definitely foster that skill, because it'll come in super handy when it comes to otherwise be manual. So whatever part you have, definitely leverage that skill too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask a question in regards to skills, but you all kind of answer that question for us. So maybe we'll kind of get back to that in case there are other skills that others might want to mention. But we are starting to get questions coming in from our viewers. So Dakota, did you want to go ahead and ask one of the questions that we have coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dakota. I also work in career services at GCC. So our first question, which is an amazing question, is could you explain what is architecture security? They're interested in that information.
I'm assuming that question is there another security architect on here? Because I can take it if not.
Yeah, I'll give it a stab, but go ahead and share your perspective.
So security architecture, at least from my experience, I started out as an analyst, and I've been a software engineer as well, and then an information assurance manager, chief information security officer, and then decided it's time to go back and get my hands, roll up my sleeves and do some a little bit more technical, because you can lose your technical skill set in some cybersecurity or security positions that you take. For me, the security architect position is a great hybrid, and I still do some incident response, and I still help and lead the analysts teams that we have. We have a SOC, and I do interface with that team, but I also interface with developers, with the business, with the state government offices, other agencies. I work with the executives, and when they have decisions to make, they bring in the technical teams or the technical leads, which all of we have a network architect, a database architect, security architect, and so we are basically the technical leads that help decision makers make decisions. So what does that really mean? For a security architect, that's security controls. So controls could be anything from what your firewall can do, the limitations and capabilities of all of your systems, to how you're coding. So if you think of the model where you have cybersecurity policy, which is usually set by your executives or your chief information security officers, those type CIOs, And then you have your procedures, what an analyst or a developer may do in their daily life, anybody in IT and some in the business as well. There's got to be something that goes from policy to implementation, and it's those standards in the middle. And that's often where the security architect plays. So we could be hands-on a firewall, helping set up the controls on a firewall, telling the network engineers, you know, which buttons need to be clicked when they stand up their firewalls, to how are we going to standardize code development, and let's put some security code reviews in there. And so we're looking at business processes, we're looking at IT processes, we're looking at everything between a policy to the day in and day out work. And there's a lot that's in between that. So I know I'm very generalized, so I'm hoping there's another architect in here that can give a different perspective.
Yeah, so I was going to share a little bit of it. Like you said, right, it's creating that governance that's going to help us solve business problems, right? As an architect, the big focus that we have is, where does the business need to improve a process or reduce the risk we have in cybersecurity, and create the solutions that will address that problem. You consider the business, the data, applications, and technology, and use a structure, language, and methods to create and frame these solutions. Sometimes it means defining a building block, right? So we're not going to build a specific solution, but we're going to say any deployments to the cloud must follow these controls. You must manage these identities a certain way. You must monitor the logs a certain way, et cetera, right? So part of the architecture is creating those, those guardrails where engineers, developers, all the other practitioners can feel comfortable deploying their solutions and understanding what's okay and won't. And sometimes it is actually defining some of those policies. Part of my role is, at least in the crypto space, is defining the policies that make sense for the risks that we have appetite for in the enterprise. So as an architect, honestly, it's a lot more hats than I expected to wear when I started the role a few years ago. I thought I was going to be a super engineer. So it turns out you're more like a program manager. You have to understand all the pieces that are important to the business and ensure that we have a clear path to get from A to B, right? And it's not just the engineering functions, but maybe training. How do we shift the budget to address all these things? How do we ensure that we can measure the validity of the controls, right? So it's not just putting them in place. How do we make sure that they stay in place? So there's a lot of things that we have to enumerate and ensure that those things are part of the architecture and the strategy. So it's like I said, I thought I was going to be a super engineer. Turns out it's a whole lot more than that. But it's a fun job. I love it.
Thank you both. So we have some very eager students that are not shy and have tons of questions for you all. So I'm so excited that you all are taking advantage of this opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and move on and see how we can get through all these questions. So one student states, I'm currently on track to get my CCNA, and I was curious, how can I get my CCNA help? Wait, sorry. How can getting my CCNA help me get into the cybersecurity scene? Also, what steps do you recommend I take to further my understanding of computer networking and team collaboration?
Well, your CCNA is definitely foundational for cybersecurity, and you would, at that point, if you wanted to specialize in cybersecurity, you can go through the beginning coursework or the foundational components to the CISSP, which I think Stacy was talking about earlier, because that's really that's the gold standard for cybersecurity side as well. Cisco has their own security coursework that you can take. You can take them at the community college level as well. I actually teach the CCNA security classes in the spring for Glendale, and then in the fall I teach the cybersecurity associate coursework as well. So that gives you a taste of what cybersecurity, what you're getting into, where the CCNA security gives you how to configure components and how all of them kind of mesh together to give you kind of an idea that that Stacy and Roberto were talking about, where they give you the overarching, this is the way things are built. The cyber ops associate gives you more of a, this is what you would be doing at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 when you get those first jobs in security operations center SOC. So if you're looking to break into the scene in security operations, which would be a good recommendation when you're starting out, because that would give you an ability to get your foot in the door and climb the ladder. Those types of courses really, really help as well. So also, what steps do you recommend to take further understanding computer networking and team collaboration? Computer networking itself, you're going to want to find some kind of either internship with, and it can be with a local contractor. Like, there's a lot of cabling contractors literally here in the valley, and those cabling contractors, they don't just pull cable, they also supply technical experience for people setting up security cameras, door access, things that actually are networked in our world. So very good experience, very, you can actually find work right now in those kinds of areas because there's plenty of IT work in the valley itself. So those kinds of things will give you a computer networking background as well. Team collaboration, any kind of job that actually where you're working with others and not just isolated in your own office. Definitely you're going to want to find things that have multiple people to accomplish a task, and that's how you're getting that team collaboration skills.
Awesome, thank you. Gosh, we have so many questions. Let's see. Let me go to a next one. I'll go down in order. I think it might be easier for us to track that. I have a student that says, I am in my early 50s and changing careers. I have no experience in IT cybersecurity, but I'm close to getting an associate's degree in it. What do I need to do to break into that field? Thank you for asking that question. I think this is a really good question and a question that we wanted to ask all the panelists. So maybe if everybody can share what they believe that they can do to break into the field that you're in. So maybe Jeff or Adam, would you like to maybe start us off with that?
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. And again, like I mentioned, I'm probably going to come in from a different angle than the rest of the panel, just because of my background in DoD and federal government. So I'm always going to encourage, again, like I said, as many people as I possibly can to start filling the pipelines to get better qualified, passionate IT and cybersecurity related expertise into those areas. And so my best recommendation is be flexible in where you're willing and wanting to live. Because if you can do that, it opens up a lot of doors in terms of opportunities that you can pursue in that regard. The East Coast of the U.S., I don't want to live there again myself for a variety of reasons, and have spent plenty of time there. But there are a multitude of opportunities within the federal agencies and the intelligence community to where you can get some entry-level positions. And when you are inside federal government and now an employee in that case, and I'm talking civilian versus the military. If you want to talk military, I'm happy to do that as well. But the multitude of training and education opportunities and certifications and things of that nature that you can get once you're inside and you're an employee are just incredible, which the organizations will pay for. That may be the case on the civilian and industry side. I'm just not familiar with it. All I know is in the positions I had and the organizations that I led, I always had plenty of opportunities for personnel at all levels, whether it's entry level, mid level, or been around a while, to where they could pursue a lot of these additional training and education opportunities. So if you're willing to come in at that entry level, and in the government, that could be a GS7, a GS9 type level where you have limited expertise, but you've at least got the degree, then you can find opportunities. And I just saw a chat pop up about recommending USA Jobs. Absolutely. Start combing through that, and you can pick geographic locations. You can pick functional type opportunities that align to your background and expertise, and just comb through there. Again, like anything, it's competitive. And if you have some experiences that you can build that resume and show that you have some capability and capacity in that arena, you're going to set yourself up well. And then the last thing I'll say too is, anytime you venture into a new position, the more that you can exert leadership and take advantage of opportunities to lead, you're going to set yourself apart from the rest of the pack. And that can be both informal leadership and formal leadership. And so keep that in mind as you move forward.
I'll highlight that last point that Jeff made, right, which is distinguishing yourself from the pack. And it sounds like if you're making a career change, you have experience in a different field. If I was having to sift through 20 candidates and they all have similar qualifications, certifications, and degrees, but I see a candidate that has some work experience, then that's something that I'm going to look for, right? How can that person not only contribute in the security analyst position, but maybe lead some of the peers, right, with that experience that you may be bringing from a different field into cybersecurity. So definitely highlight that in your resume and the interview, right? Aside from the cybersecurity experience that I'm bringing at the entry level, I have a bunch of other experience that have matured over the years in a different field that could be directly applied to this organization.
Anybody else with feedback on how to break into the field? There was a student that asked a question, also a cyber student earning their associate soon, and they were asking where anybody might recommend that they kind of get their foot in the door to work in the industry. So I think that's kind of very much related to one another. The question, like, how can they, break into the industry? Would you all recommend doing things like internships, or what kind of responsibilities should they be looking for? And I think this is a good, even though these are cybersecurity students asking the question, I think this could be a good question for all the panelists, because you all have different backgrounds, and it'd be great to hear that.
I think one practical thing that people can do when they're starting to break into any kind of field is, first of all, they actually have the expectations that when you're starting the process of anything, whether it's a career change or whether it's you're just starting off for the first time, you have to remember that when you start, you're going to be, it's the old adage, you're the low person in the profile, and you're building a background after that. So there's an expectation that you have to take your pride and check it at the door, basically, where you're knowing that you're going to be starting out, and you're just taking your passion and packing it up with you, as well as your skill set, and you're bringing it to work every day, and you're showing people, and that's how you distinguish yourself in the pack. But another practical thing that you can be doing is building that background online with things like LinkedIn, where you're actually you're creating a profile about yourself that's not just a social network that's for your personal use, maybe for another product. But the LinkedIn product actually allows you to come almost immediately in contact with people from the industry that you are most interested in. and allow you to gain insight, gain the experience of talking to people who have been there and done that. And also that aspect of networking that's so important to getting recruited into those first level jobs. Because I tell you, with our current pandemic situation, sometimes your networking is not the old-fashioned way, meeting people at dinners or social gatherings and handshakes. Now they're literally online at that LinkedIn forum, basically, where you're looking at different people in the virtual medium. So you have to be comfortable with not just the in-person, but learning how to build your background, build your profile, put a little bit of your scripting code out there and be willing to share it and say, hey, critique me, and those kinds of things. Those kinds of aspects tell people that you are a go-getter and that you're willing to actually work at things and not just let life come to you.
I'll just add, I don't have much to add because I love what you all said. It doesn't matter what age you are, you're already doing the work that you need to do to get your foot in the door in cybersecurity. For instance, going back to school and getting your associates. I think that's what you had said this student was doing. In the LinkedIn, there's professional organizations you can gain access to, especially through some of the certifications. I know cybersecurity in the end is it's a small world. When you get into a field like this, I remember dealing for years with this voice on the phone of somebody in a SAP facility. We were getting crypto keys, and for years it was the same grouchy voice of a man from Florida, and I was working in White Sands Missile Range at the time. And 10 years later, we're in a professional organization, and I recognize a voice, and I said, Darren, is that you? And when you get into these professional organizations, you'll meet a lot of people, whether you're in the industry or not, or whether you're working on your degree. And it becomes a small world in a lot of senses, especially when you start getting into federal and the DoD area or state and local government. People tend to be in the same organizations. And I also think that checking your ego out the door, because even if you get into IT, for instance, I got into security because post 9/11, none of these brilliant RF engineers wanted to inventory their safe. It was a daunting task. And so I basically, after I got done with my analytical work or running some scripts, I would go inventory safes, and I started reading policies, and I started putting controls in place that I didn't even realize I was doing. So a lot of it is just being happy where you are and putting your ego at the door, and then in your spare time, going back and getting your degrees and your certificates that get you through HR and the professional organization. So I think it's all been captured very well. Thank you.
Awesome. So I have a few questions. I think these are going to be more directed to you, Adam. One of the questions, well, there's two in regards to software and programming. So anybody else can jump in, but maybe you could start us off, Adam. What is the view of the software development? What is the view of the software development community when it comes to coding boot camps? And also in the topic of programming language, how many languages does a typical software engineer have to master in order to be competent or successful as a software engineer?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. In regard to the boot camp, I would say be afraid, be very afraid. Seriously, though, be very wary of what these companies are offering you. Like the old adage goes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I've seen the advertising where they say, give me 12 weeks, I'm going to get you a 6-figure job. I don't know that it works as easily as they want it to. I would say if you're looking at a boot camp, there are some reputable companies that do put these on. I know U of A has a boot camp. They tend to be focused on front-end development, JavaScript frameworks, working on user interfaces. And it's not to say that you can't get a job after doing a boot camp. I would ask you to do the research. Take a look at this school or the company putting on the boot camp and really look what their job placement actually is. You know, ask them if they can put into writing their percentage of placement. The last thing you want to do is shell out a ton of money. And a lot of these are put on by private companies that aren't doing it for charity, and they will charge you. So really make sure you know what you're getting into. Now, that being said, can you get a job as a software engineer after going to a boot camp? I would say yes, with caveats. There are companies that won't let you get your foot in the door unless you have a degree. However, there are a lot of tech companies that don't care. What they are going to look at is your work experience, and they're going to look at what you've done. So let's say, for example, you go to a boot camp to be a front-end developer. They're going to look at, or they're going to want to see, show me some user interfaces you developed. Point me to some websites you've made. And I want to see those to get a feel for what your experience is, and then we can talk. And then once you've actually got the interview, you're going to have to go through a programming interview like every other software engineer does. So you want to make sure that if you are seriously thinking about a boot camp, they can place you, that they have connections to get you interviews, that they're going to give you enough experience to make you competitive, and that they're going to give you the skills to succeed in a software development interview. Because interviewing as a software engineer it's a pretty different animal than interviewing in other careers. So I think we had another question about programming languages. So real quick, I would say that get yourself really proficient in one common language. So, I mean, we're talking either Java, C++, C#, Python. Learn one of those very well, and then learn some other ones too. Chances are, when you interview as a software engineer, unless the shop has real hard and fast requirements about the languages that they want to see you use, they'll say, if you're comfortable in Python, I know this is how we do it at Amazon. We'll say, if you're comfortable in Python, we'll interview you using Python. And then when you come to work, you're going to have to use whatever languages we're using. But we want to judge your skills as an engineer, not your skills in Python. So get proficient enough to display your proficiency in a language, and then anything else you'll learn as you need to.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we are running out of time. I feel like we could have done 2 hours easily. We're always afraid, like, is anybody going to ask questions? And then here we are, almost towards the end of it, and we have so many questions still. So I'm going to try to look at questions maybe that could be good general, especially since we're towards the end. Let's see here. USA jobs.
I just want to jump in and let the viewers know that if they would like to be connected with any of our panelists, if they have more questions and our panelists are open to it, I would love to make that connection. So I'll put my email in the chat box. Just reach out to me and we can get someone to answer any of your questions.
Yes, thank you for doing that, Dakota. I appreciate it. So we have 10 minutes, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time because it is late in the evening and you all took time out of your busy schedule to join us. So maybe we will wrap up with one final question that all of our panelists can share. And like Dakota was saying, if our panelists are interested in maybe sharing information, or if you have specific questions that we were unable, unfortunately, to get to tonight, feel free to connect with Dakota and we can direct those questions to our panelists and see if they can follow up afterwards. So for each one of you, if you had one piece of advice that you can share for our students that want to go into this industry, what nugget or piece of advice could you leave for our students?
I'll go ahead and start, and I think this applies to any field, right? This is advice that I got from one of my mentors, and actually, I guess I'll make it 2 points. One of them is get yourself a good mentor, right? At least one or many. That's one of the things that helped me incredibly throughout the years. And one of the pieces that I think Jeff mentioned right about distinguishing yourself from the rest of the pack. That's one of the things that stood out to me, 20 years ago when this was shared with me. It's not just working hard, but how are you distinguishing yourself from the rest of the team? In our company, for sure, there's reorgs that happen constantly. How can we improve the enterprise, a certain way, which, inevitably means people movement. And so when those people that are making these changes look around the field, they're going to look at folks that are helping accomplish that mission. So you want to be on that short list. So whether it's, I heard earlier, check your ego at the door and do things that nobody else wants to touch, right? You did something that nobody was willing to do. Or, Adam was talking about programming languages. You be that person that understands the kernel module like nobody else. Whatever your area is, be super proficient, and that takes an effort, right? Patient, be diligent, be disciplined, and just have that goal, right? For me, again, that's helped me a ton to get to where I am by distinguishing myself and having always that in the back of my mind. I have to distinguish myself as being somebody that's going to be critical to achieving that mission. And if I'm not, then I'm disposable.
Yeah, I'll throw in just my quick perspective. Then is two things, and everyone's kind of hinted at these already. Flexibility in where you go and what you do can earlier in your career progression can really set you up for the later career progression and establish a willingness to do what you need to do to get the job done and take care of the mission and the organization. So be flexible for those earlier opportunities. If it maybe takes you somewhere you maybe didn't want to go geographically, adapt to that and just know that it's going to pay off down the road. And then to jump on Robert's point too is solve hard problems. If you're solving hard problems for the people you're working for, the people you're working with, and that organization and those it touches, you're going again to set yourself apart. So sometimes that requires a very in-depth level of expertise. Sometimes it means you have to kind of pull back a little bit and have more breadth. And so you need to kind of find the right balance and tweak it at the right time. Easier said than done, of course, but that is kind of a secret to success in that regard.
I don't think I'm going to say much different. I had a mentor, he retired Air Force colonel. Flexibility is the key to air power. He'd always tell me, I don't fly jets, never have, but it's so true. I've been very flexible in my career. Also, the mentors, I've had so many wonderful mentors. Understand the mission. My boss, I just told today, which piece of carpet do you want me to mop up today? Because I know the mission and I understand it, it gives me confidence to know that some days I'm going to be playing very, very minor roles, maybe inventorying a safe or looking at the Palo Alto logs. Another day I might be writing policy and working with the governor's office. So I don't come in with a huge grandiose expectation, but I do know that I'm very flexible, and I think understanding the mission and understanding where my leadership, what their struggles are, and just how quick you have to adapt, especially in technology.
Any other of our panelists that haven't shared their last words of wisdom with our students or our attendees?
Sure, I would say a lot of what I've heard so far on the panel, I definitely echo. Focus on your technical skills, yes, but really work on those soft skills as well. Focus on communication and teamwork. If you're looking for some good advice as to what do I do after I graduate? How do I position myself to get a great job as a software engineer? I heard earlier, look for internship opportunities. I absolutely second that. If you get an internship with a company in your upper division coursework and you do a good job, the way the job market is now, they're probably going to try and get you to sign an agreement before you even graduate. They'll say, hey, when you're done with your degree, come back. Really, please come back. They're going to want you. So those kind of, even if you don't get an offer, being able to point to a resume and say, hey, I did a summer at American Express. I did a summer with Amazon. You know, I did an internship, you know, as a government contractor. That's really going to get you ahead of the competition. So look for those internship opportunities. And as you get close to approaching your graduation date, any of you that want to enter the field of software engineering, start prepping for that coding interview. I can't say that enough. That's a really big thing in the industry, and that's the way that you're going to get a great job with a good compensation package. That's all.
Was that everybody? No, we're missing a few. Who's being shy? Roberto, Josh, Jeff, did you all go?
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add to the conversation because that was a tremendous set of last minute nuggets. I know also one thing that has happened for me during my career is, I mean, it's a interesting trick to master the art of making yourself disposable so that you can move on and progress throughout your career. But one of the ways that I found that you do that is you get to know something, you master it at such a level that you can teach it to somebody else and prove your mastery of that. And then you can then bring on new recruits, teach the next generation, have things like succession planning in IT, because there's a corner of IT that holds on really tightly to their specific bailiwick or the thing they know so well. And by doing that, they've pigeonholed themselves into that particular position for the rest of their career. And one neat way to actually not only help the next generation, but to help your advancement as well, is to actually teach what you know to someone else in the line.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us this evening. For in the chats, if you were able to open up your chats, I did leave the link to our evaluation. So if you are an attendee, we ask that you please complete that evaluation. If you are receiving extra credit, we will ask those pieces of information in that evaluation. So don't forget to do that if you are wanting to receive extra credit for participating. But with that, we will sign off. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you, Stacy, Adam, Jeff, Josh, Roberto. We are so appreciative of your time and sharing your insight with our students. Students and attendees, we will stay on for a few minutes. So if you have any questions for us in Career Services, we can stick around for that, but we will stay on for a few minutes before closing out the event. So if you needed to copy the link or copy our email addresses, you can do that. But again, thank you so much, and we hope that everybody has a really great evening. Bye, everyone.